10 for 10 for the week ending October 18, 2025. Want a quick 10-minute wrap-up of the week's compliance news? Well, this is the podcast for you, 10 for 10, where Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, wraps up 10 top compliance stories which occurred over the past week. If you don't know, Tom has a daily news podcast, appropriately called the Daily Compliance News, and 10 for 10 wraps up the week. So get up on a Saturday morning, have a great cup of coffee, and check out 10 for 10, the podcast which gives you the week's top compliance news. Are you interested in upping your game in compliance through the use of AI and machine learning technology? Well, check out my latest book, Upping Your Game, How Compliance and Risk Management Move to 2030 and Beyond. You can check it out in the show notes. I've got a link to the purchase at Amazon.com. Upping Your Game. We begin with a story really that makes you think of pots and kettles, where Donald Trump lobbied the Knesset to pardon Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for corruption. Yes. Of course, would require Netanyahu to admit he was engaged in corruption. And of course, we have Donald Trump suggesting someone else be pardoned for corruption. Gee, I wonder if he'll pardon himself for corruption when he leaves the White House. Next up, from the Wall Street Journal, the PCAOB proposes a 20% cut to board members amid SEC scrutiny. In its continued attempt to eviscerate the PCAOB, the SEC is slicing its budget probably by 20% or so, and that includes a pay cut to those PCAOB board members who are apparently detested by SEC Chairman Paul Atkins. So the attack on the PCAOB continues. Next up, from the Progressive magazine, Perfecting the Art of Corruption. They claim that Trump's full-time job, and the one he's most committed to, is corruption. And it is funding Trump family businesses, which essentially, with the phrase, pay here to access to the president. So, interesting article from the Progressive. Next up, from the BBC, if you have a cyber attack at your organization, the UK government's advice is to go back to pen and paper. Yes, the government has written to chief executives across the United Kingdom, strongly recommended that they should have physical copies of their plans at the ready as a precaution. So that would seem to mean that you need to print out everything and have a copy of it. Now, this is the United Kingdom, which has a different school system than the United States. So hopefully students coming out of the UK system can read and write better than American students can, but it's going to require a very old school change of printing things out and having them ready. So the plan on the shelf may need to stay the plan on the shelf. But that's the recommendation from the UK government. And our next story comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, and it is about how the U.S. is now pressuring companies outside the United States to do their bidding, as the U.S. officials warned their Dutch counterparts if a Netherlands-based chip maker wanted to avoid being put on a trade blacklist, it would have to remove its Chinese owner as a CEO. So understand that now the U.S. is dictating who can be the CEO of a foreign company. Now, they've done that in the United States, or at least tried to, with this form of socialism that the Trump administration is pushing. But now it's moving it to companies outside the United States. Well, we'll see how that goes forward. Our next story comes to us from the San Francisco Chronicle, which reports that the sheriff of San Mateo County has been removed due to corruption by the county's Board of Supervisors. This was available in the first time somebody, or a new California law, which allows 4/5 vote or 80% of a Board of Supervisors to remove a county sheriff, and this was done. Unfortunately, and a very bad look, the county sheriff was the first time a Latina had become county sheriff in San Mateo County. Next up, from the Wall Street Journal, what are glue employees and why and how do they hold everything together? Well, successful teams aren't necessarily about star talent, but more often depend on the quiet leaders who hold their organizations together. So do you have glue employees on your team? You probably do, because behavioral scientist John Levy says that the secret often rests with these people for teamwork who often seek or work without seeking recognition. Next up, remember CZ, the head of Binance? Well, he's now working with the Trump family. Yes, in his anticipated pardon. Yes, we are predicting here on 10 for 10 that CZ will be pardoned. He is now working with a Trump family enterprise, or at least linked to the Trump's sons, and is partnering in a blockchain project by the family office of Binance Holdings. So if you wondered at all whether CZ will be pardoned, the answer to that is yes, proving once again that all you need to do is either make a big campaign contribution or do business with Trump. Next up, from France 24. Shortages, sanitation issues, and corruption bring Morocco's public hospitals to a breaking point. And this has been a key demand in the protest movement in Morocco since mid-September, as the state of the Morocco's public hospitals has become a symbol of frustration. And it's largely due to corruption. So if you ever wonder what the impact of corruption is or whether corruption kills, well, the answer to that is yes to all the above, and it's playing out in real time in Morocco now. Our next story follows up some reporting by the Wall Street Journal, and this story comes to us from Reuters, and women who have alleged abuse by late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have now sued the Bank of America and the Bank of New York Mellon, alleging the banks knowingly provided financial services that enabled his sex trafficking operations. The allegations are based on the reporting from the Wall Street Journal that these banks ignored red flags of human trafficking, allowing Epstein to make payments across Europe and other areas in round amounts multiple times. And this should have informed the bank that something askance is going on, particularly when shell companies and false names were used for the payments. So great reporting from the Wall Street Journal. Of course, Compliance Week has also reported on the banks that facilitated Epstein in his sex trafficking operations. And it's a continued headache for the Trump administration going forward. And our final story comes to us from the New York Times, which is an open letter from Danielle Sasson. She is the interim U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Manhattan, who resigned rather than dismiss corruption charges against Eric Adams, as the Trump administration cut a deal to keep their thumb on him during his tenure as mayor over immigration issues. And she explained that lawyers have to make difficult decisions, or rather, in difficult times, have to uphold their ethical principles. This was the primary reason she resigned, and she hopes law schools will understand this and not point to the corruption of the Trump administration, but really what lawyers can, should, and indeed must do when faced with clearly illegal acts. This is Tom Fox again. 10 for 10 is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. I'd also urge you to check out the Daily Compliance News, which posts every week from Monday to Friday, where I give 4 curated stories of bribery, corruption, and compliance events that will allow you to help you start your day as well. So check out the Daily Compliance News and subscribe or rate and review to both 10 for 10 and the Daily Compliance News. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of 10 for 10. I hope you'll check out the newest podcast in the Compliance Podcast Network, the Compliance Tip of the Day. In Compliance Tip of the Day, I give a 5 to 8 minute summary of one tip that you can integrate into your compliance program or put together for greater compliance program efficiency. Finally, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, I am preparing a new season of Adventures in Compliance where I go through the 4 novels of Sherlock Holmes. Hear it on the Compliance Podcast Network.